What's up, everybody? Welcome to Just a Little Salt, the podcast hosted by me, the Salty Paramedic. If you or anybody you know wants to be on the show, make sure to send a request to Just a Little Salt podcast at gmail.com. If you want to support the podcast and the work I'm doing for first responders, it's easy. Go on the saltyparamedic.com. Everything there, books, merch, resources, is built around this community. If you're looking for bonus episodes or content you're not going to hear anywhere else, make sure to join the Patreon. Go on patreon.com and search the Salty Paramedic. That support directly helps me keep bringing this content to life. Without further ado, thanks for listening. Here's the show. How's everybody doing today? We are live, episode 14. I have Nurse Gwenny with me. Very excited for this episode. I had the pleasure of meeting her last year at a conference. Love her videos. I'm sure all of y'all do as well. So I'll let you introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, guys. And Cody, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm Nurse Gwenny. You may know me from TikTok or Instagram. I do daily videos anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes long, or the occasional longer video that might bore you to pieces. And that's my goal, is to not bore you to pieces. I want to make learning fun, and I want to make difficult concepts easy for people to understand. I know, so I've been a nurse for about 12 years, and I started out in the emergency department at a small suburban ER in East St. Louis. Moved to Kansas City, worked at a level 1 trauma center for a few years. And as some of you might be familiar with, that kind of takes a toll on you. And after 3 years, I thought, I got to get out of here and do something different. So that was when I started flying. And I've been flying and then still working PRN in the emergency department because I do love being bedside. I've been flying since 2018. And as I got into flight, I took a flight course that, if I said the name of it, everybody would have heard of it. And it was great, but it was very academic and very textbook like. It very much reminded me of my college chemistry professor, right? The reason I dropped pre-med and switched my major to psychology, right? And then had to go back to nursing school a few years later. But when I took this course, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just memorizing these test answers. And it worked. I passed the test on my first attempt to get my CFRN, but I didn't really understand these concepts. I didn't understand why I was doing the things that I was doing. And so I dove in and I just started learning this stuff and finding a way to grasp these concepts. And I would order med school textbooks that were like one edition older, right? Because if you get the current edition, they're like $6 billion. But if you get one that's like last year's book, they're 25 cents on eBay. So I would order like pulmonology textbooks and just all kinds of books to read and listen to podcasts and go down YouTube rabbit holes, learning these concepts. And then people would ask me questions like, hey, you know about this, teach me about it. And so I would always keep dry erase markers with me in my backpack that I take everywhere and just, draw a little illustration. Well, here's how this works. And I found that I was able to connect with so many people through that. Then I just started getting more requests here and there to, hey, come teach at our agency. Hey, will you be part of our paramedic refresher? And it just kind of grew from there. And so that's how the Nurse Gwenny platform started.
So I'm a firefighter medic, and I come from a combination department. And as most people know, firefighters don't really like to learn EMS or harp on it as much. But I've found that your videos have kept my attention because you offer a different learning style, teaching style. It makes it interesting. It's not boring, and that's something that's very, very important. So I'm hoping after this podcast, some of my firefighter buddies might, go on your videos and try to learn some things. But
I beg to differ with you. I think there are a lot more firefighters out there that want to learn the EMS side of things just as much as they know the fire side. I used to work for a large education company. I would travel all over the nation teaching a course, and I always had more paramedics than I did nurses because it was a critical care prep course meant for nurses and paramedics. And I would go to a lot of fire departments, and I kind of had the same mentality of, oh, firefighters don't care about the fire side of things, and there's a healthy banter of, fire and EMS. And I found that firefighters were sometimes my best students. They were so curious. And I think it is becoming more of a popular thing to do. I think that the fire service, and you can speak to this better than I can with you being a firefighter, the fire service is recognizing that, like, you guys have done so good at fire prevention over the last few decades that you've almost worked yourselves nearly out of a job, right? Because we don't have near the volume
Absolutely.
of fire calls that we
Hmm.
had decades ago. And that's a wonderful thing. And if we can take a rabbit trail, I know we're less than 5 minutes into the podcast,
Yeah.
but can we take a rabbit trail
Yeah,
really quick?
absolutely.
How
Absolutely.
much, how much money, how many resources, how many lives have been saved because of fire prevention? And why can't we do that for EMS? And I think the response is that you can do it for EMS. And I'm going to make a plug. You need to have my friend Sam McGill
Yeah.
on your podcast at some point in time. She's Medic
Okay.
McGill, and her whole platform is on mobile integrated health. And I think that's the future of EMS, right?
Hmm.
And so, just like installing smoke detectors and making sure that buildings are up to building code so that they don't burn to the ground, with a sniff of a single spark. Things like that aren't as sexy as fighting a big fire. In
Hmm.
EMS, the same thing. Mobile integrated health and preventative care is not nearly as sexy as airway management and hemorrhage control and giving pre hospital blood products. Like, those are all good things. We still all need to train and do all of those things. But we need to do the same thing in EMS that you guys did in fire. Like, we as EMS need to take a page from you guys.
Hmm. No, I agree 100%. I've had a lot of people on this podcast discuss those things, and I think it's a much needed. And I mean, I can agree with you. I've met a lot of firefighters that do care about the EMS side, but I've met a lot that's gotten to it for the wrong reasons, and it's sad, you know. And a lot of the newer generation I've talked to that get into paramedicine not for the reason to help people, just for promotions and money, which is weird because we don't make a lot of money. But it's disheartening. So it's good to talk to other people that's had different experiences, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, to bring awareness to different professions and hopefully bring knowledge of things we can do to be better. But we're like you said, we're 6 minutes in. We haven't gotten to the first question, so we'll dive in real quick. So let's rewind. Let's rewind. What made you choose nursing? Like way back whenever you started.
Yeah. My mom tells the story that I was 4 years old and at the doctor's office getting just routine childhood kindergarten vaccines. And I was pretty pissed off at the nurse who gave me a shot. And out of just defiance, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a nurse so I can give other kids shots. And that's where, I guess, I don't remember that, but my mom tells that story. That's where my aspirations of being a nurse began. I remember being in second grade and we had a book in my school library about being a nurse. And if you go back and look at the little card, remember when we were kids? I don't know, you're significantly younger. Maybe it was barcodes by the time you came around, but there was a little card that would go in the front cover of a book, and they would put, whoever's name has that book so they can track you
Hmm.
down if you don't return it. But if you go look at it from like 1992, it would say Gwen Stokes, Gwen Stokes, Gwen Stokes. I checked it out so many times. And when I got to high school, I knew I wanted to either go into nursing or to med school.
Hmm.
And I was a pole vaulter in high school. I got a full ride scholarship to a college that didn't have a nursing program, but they did have pre med. And I was like, well, I guess that's my decision. And so I went in pre med. I finished my first year of pre med and I was like, this sucks like a lot. I don't want to do this for like the next 13 years of my life between undergrad, med school, residency. I don't want to do this. I want to have life. And that's not to say that, physicians can't have a life through med school and residency. It's just a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no big deal. I'll just change my major. But we didn't have that nursing program. And so I went psychology and I graduated with a degree in psychology, which you can do nothing with a bachelor's degree in psychology. You have to get at least a master's, if not a PsyD or a PhD or a doctorate.
Hmm.
Um, but I got married super young and started having kids, and it just wasn't in the cards for me to go and get my master's degree. So, my first husband, my husband at the time, after he finished his master's degree, I said, I can't stop thinking about nursing. I have so many regrets for not going to nursing school, and I want to go back to school. So I went through an accelerated nursing program. If you're unfamiliar, you have to have a bachelor's in something. It doesn't matter what. Like, you can have a bachelor's in cinematography and all of the science prereqs and stuff. And then you go through hell on earth for like 15 months. And so we did 21 credit hours for 4 semesters in a row. We did fall, spring, summer, fall, and it was over. So I was glad it was over quickly because it was absolutely miserable, but got into nursing and I have not looked back. I absolutely love it. And I know that like I was created to be a wife and a mom and a nurse.
Wow. Uh, that accelerated nursing program, I didn't even know that was a thing. I took an accelerated paramedic course, which is was 9 months for me. So
Yeah.
um, it was a little different. But looking back, once you got your once you started being a nurse, what's something nursing school didn't prepare you for?
Nursing school does not prepare you to be a nurse at all. Like I thought when I came out of nursing school and I graduated magna cum laude, so I thought I was hot shit. Uh, I was not, as it turns out. And when I got to the ER, I was like, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Like nursing school just prepared me to start training to actually being a nurse. Like it taught you a little bit of the book smarts, but none of the street smarts. So really, I feel like nursing school is a lot like med school. Like med school doesn't prepare you to be a doctor; it just prepares you for residency. And physicians have to go through a residency and pick their specialty, right? And they
Hmm.
spend several years doing that until they are proficient enough to be able to function independently. And nursing is the same way. And I'm so grateful for my nurse residency program that was 1 year long. And then, I had, I think, 5 months of orientation in the emergency department. And even then, when I got off orientation, I still barely knew my ass from a hole in the ground. And it took me a few years of being an ER nurse to really feel like I had proficiency or at least a satisfactory performance in the emergency department. But nursing school does not prepare you to be a nurse, especially not in the emergency department.
Well, with that being said, do you remember your first patient you had where you were like, "Oh crap, this is real. Well, what am I going to do?"
I do. I remember a few of my first critical patients. I remember one of them. It was a home birth, and I have nothing against home births. Like, if that's what someone chooses for themselves, that's great as long as you're making an informed, empowered decision. Good for you. But they're one of those things that scares the ever loving daylights out of me because I've been traumatized by it. Right. So, this guy, he carries his like lifeless sheet white wife in the front door and said she delivered at home yesterday. She's been bleeding ever since then. He like flops her in a wheelchair. She's like pretty much unresponsive. And they wheel her into a room. She's, in just florid hypovolemic shock. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, I thought you might need this." And he hands over like a grocery sack or like a Walmart sack. And I look in there and it's blood clots like the size of a softball. And he was like, "I didn't know if you guys would believe me how bad she was bleeding." And I was like, judging by her, gray skin, we do believe you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
no confirmation needed. Her blood pressure of like 40 over death confirms,
Hmm.
but thank you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was one of my early ones. And do you have any topics like that, or like any pathologies that just like scare the ever loving daylights out of you?
Well, I mean, obviously, any pediatrics. I mean, not like sick, but like just I'm talking about like pediatric cardiac arrest runs always get to me. But as far as them being
Yeah,
sick and treating them, like I understand what I have to do, and I do it. It doesn't mean I'm not nervous sometimes, because they're little
yeah,
adults. But that that's the only thing that terrifies me. Obviously, I've never had to do childbirth in the field. I got to deliver my daughter, but that was in a controlled environment in a hospital room, so that's very
yeah,
different. But that's really the only thing that terrifies me at the end of the day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, One thing I like to talk about is how preceptors and other individuals we work with as a young provider can shape how we act in our future careers. Was there anybody that you worked with early on that really shaped how you care for patients and shape you in general?
Yes, absolutely. So it wasn't super early in my career. It was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years into my career. I took a break from flying to go work COVID contracts because money, right? During COVID, it was like paying astronomically. So I took a year off of flying to do some COVID contracts. And I met a nurse named Monica, and she was just the embodiment of a maternal spirit. And, she would not fit culture's expectations of like cool or the most popular person in the emergency department, but she was universally loved and adored by people. She was absolutely brilliant, but she didn't rub it in anybody's face. She never made anyone feel stupid, and she had more kindness and compassion than I have ever seen in anyone. And she was lovingly called Mani, and she was like the mommy Mani of the group because she precepted a lot of the new grads there. And I've just always thought to myself, like, some people are like, what would Jesus do? Sometimes I think to myself, what would Monica do in this moment? And I haven't seen her or talked to her in years because, like I said, it was on a
Hmm.
travel assignment. But I think about her really often because her kindness and compassion and how smart she was, but how brilliantly she was able to use that smarts. It left a huge impact on me, and I'm so thankful that I got to work with her and help to learn to practice as smoothly as she did.
No, I talk about in my book. There was an individual, a paramedic in my home county that he's probably been a paramedic over 40 years, to be honest, a long time. And my grandfather, when he was in poor health, we'd always have to call to help us lift him because he was a very big man. And that paramedic would show up on scene, 2, 3 in the morning and would be so kind and so compassionate every single time. I'm like, you have somebody that's been doing the job as long as he has, and he still has that mentality. You know, I have no excuse. So that he really helped change me, and I had the pleasure of working with him a few times as well. So that's something I always like to ask people and just find out their stories. Um,
Kindness is such an underrated soft skill that I think we do need to be highlighting more importantly. Like, of course, we need to know our pathology. We need to understand the pharmacology of the drugs that we're giving our patients. We need to be sharp on our skills. But all of that without kindness and compassion is just a resounding gong, right? Like if we don't have the kindness and compassion, that's such an integral part of our practice as paramedics, as nurses. And I wish that we could incorporate that into curriculum. I wish that we could make it popular. I wish that we could make it sexy to be kind and
mhm.
compassionate. And I see some trends in the industry that way, but I hope that that continues and we really make
Yeah.
that a key part of our practice.
Yeah, and speaking of the preceptors, one of my paramedic preceptors was very excited that you were going to be on the show. So shout out, Liz, if you're watching this.
Hey,
Um,
Liz.
what talking about nursing skills? What's a skill you're really proud of that people would never guess? Something you're really good at.
Okay. I'm going to take this in a way you didn't expect. A skill that I was terrible at up until probably, I don't know, this last year was placing a Foley in a woman because oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story on a podcast. Okay, how many downloads do you get per episode? Like how many people are going to hear this story?
Right
Okay,
now.
here we
mm.
don't tell me the number.
Okay,
Tell
okay,
me it's
okay,
like 4.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Just 4 or 5. That's it.
When I was in nursing school, I was in my labor and delivery rotation, and my instructor was like, "Okay, you need to go place a Foley on this woman who is about to have a C-section." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm not really comfortable. Like, I knew I wasn't going to go into labor and delivery, and like women's vaginas, those were like none of my business, right? I didn't
Yes.
want to be in those. Like, I can set up a pelvic exam and hand the physician the swabs, but like otherwise, none of my business. And I was like, okay. And so then I go in and I'm doing my best and I just like trying to fake the confidence and talk myself into do it. I rammed that Foley right in her downstairs doorbell. And that woman, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, Cody, it was so bad. It was so bad. I felt so bad. She was so patient with me, but she like climbed up that bed and oh my gosh, it was so bad. And so I've carried that with me. It's okay for you to laugh at me. I've carried that with me and I've done anything to avoid putting a Foley in a woman. Like I'll tell another nurse like I'll do all of your IVs today. I will drop an NG on your patient. I will clean up your code brown if you'll just go do this if you'll go do this Foley on a woman for me. And then like I don't know, maybe like a year ago, I had this epiphany And I met another girl, another woman while I was traveling that she and I became fast friends and we've stayed in touch and we're still really close friends. But she was a sane nurse and it was all her business what was, the downstairs for a woman. And she was really good at Foley's. When we were traveling together, she was always my go-to girl. Like she would do my Foley's every single time for me. And she walked me through it on like, okay, Gwenny, you don't have to be afraid of this. Here's what you do. If you just use your two fingers and you pull, you're going to be able to see it. And so about a year ago, I was like, what the heck is wrong with me that I have been avoiding this skill? Like I teach the opposite of this advice. Like when there is a subject that scares you or that you're not good at, like dive in and become really good at that and make it a strength. And so I had a moment of like conviction that like I'm trying to hype up other nurses and paramedics and trying to teach them to don't be afraid of whatever topic, skill, patient population, whatever scares you, deep dive it, learn more about it, and make it a strength. And I was like, and I'm not even doing that myself on something as silly as placing a Foley in a woman. And I was like, gosh dang it, I have to get good at this. And so I just decided that I was going to listen to all the teaching that Annie had given me about how to place a Foley on a woman. And now, like, blindfold me, I'll do it left handed. Like, I've gotten pretty good at them simply because all I had to do was just try.
Well, I hope you know you're not the only one that's ever done that because I've heard countless stories of nurses at my local hospital that's done it. So it
I heard a
happens more than
doctor
you
tell
think.
me that I had a physician that I really respect. I actually worked with her at the teaching facility that she worked at when she was a resident, and now years later, we both work at the same suburban ER together now. And I was telling that story, I don't know, like several months ago, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I did that to somebody last week," and I was like, "Oh, I feel so validated. Like you're such a phenomenal physician, and you did that to somebody. Like, I feel better."
Oh, that's awesome. So we're going to switch over to the reality of nursing, just some of the funny topics, which we've already dived
Yeah.
into a funny topic. What's the most ridiculous call light request you've ever had?
I don't think any call light request is ridiculous because for a patient, it's an unmet need. I do have one exception, one caveat. So I don't like the kind of like joking mentality of like call lights are annoying to us.
Hmm.
I try to prevent patients from even being on the call light by, again, going back to preventative, right? When I'm in the room trying to cluster my care and meet all of their needs and making sure I'm asking the patient, like, is there anything that you need? I've got an ambulance coming in next door, so I'm going to be in there for at least 15, 20 minutes, settling this patient in, triaging them, etc. So I won't be able to come back in. Is there anything that you need now? And try to prevent that. I will say, when I was in nursing school, I was a tech on a critical care tele floor. And the only ridiculous request was we had a guy who was interested in some inappropriate activities while he was an inpatient. And he would call his call light all night long and ask for a fresh box of tissues and lotion. And that felt really yucky. That was
Oh,
really gross. And
wow.
I was like, I'm not participating in this. And
Yes.
that's something that like I work really, really hard to help reverse or avoid the sexualization of nurses. Like it feels really gross around Halloween time when people dress up as like naughty nurses. I'm like, you have no idea. You have no idea. Like this is not a sexy thing, okay?
Hmm.
And I think that maybe we could help ourselves get a little bit more respect and help just kind of the general public understand what the role is that we do by not engaging in that. And so anyway, all that to say that was the only request from a call light that ugh,
Yeah.
inappropriate, gross,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculous.
I was always interested in that because, obviously it's a little different, but some of the 911 calls that people call an ambulance for, like I've been called to pick up the remote before TV remote that they've dropped and stuff like that. So I was just interested that if, call lights were any different. Um,
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I thought you were going to say like the classic toe pain. I
I
didn't see
mean,
pick
yeah,
up the
yeah,
remote coming.
yeah. I have a list like there is it. You would be so amazed, and it's one of those things you get there, and I get it. We go to elderly people that are lonely, and they call for certain things because they're lonely, and I'm fine, with that. But when I get this, or when a call goes out for a serious run that's right down the road for me, and you've taken me away from that, and another ambulance that's farther away that's when I have a problem. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
sure.
what's uh what's your internal monologue like when the call light goes off during charting? Because I've seen you. You seem a lot different than the nurses I've seen, but it seems like when they're at the computer and they get interrupted for silly stuff, they get upset.
I always chart in real time. I joke with people that I have two speeds, sleeping and 1,000 miles an hour. And so it's exceedingly rare that I get interrupted in the middle of charting simply because I don't let charting stack up. And I realize that my job in the ER is totally different than someone like ICU, where they might be at the bedside bathing someone, turning someone, and it's somebody really unstable and they've got to be really slow and methodical. And so they might be in there for, 2 hours and they're titrating pressors while they're doing all of this. And so they might have to go in and sit down and catch up on charting, or med surge nurses that have 6, 7, 8 patients and they're trying to go through and assess everyone. They might have to sit down and chart for long periods of time. But that's not my situation. I don't ever have to sit down and chart for a really long amount of time. So it's pretty rare that I'll have any moments like that. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last time I've sat down and charted anything longer than 5 minutes or so.
That's good. That's good. Um, Anytime you've ever had a tough patient interaction, how do you mentally reset after that? Just tough patient interactions, tough patients in general.
Yeah, so two ways of answering that. So tough patients, I'm thinking like tough calls, right? Ones that sit with us that are really emotionally painful versus a tough patient as in somebody who's just really difficult,
Hard headed. Yep.
obstinate, defiant. Yeah. So two separate things that I see. My toxic trait is that I think I can talk everybody down. And it doesn't always work. Like,
I'm the
right?
same way.
You know
Yep.
how white women aren't afraid of anything? Do you follow that guy online? He's so funny.
Yes.
Like you'll see an encounter of like a woman like, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," and it's like a wild tiger, right? He's like,
Yes.
"White women ain't a scared of nothing." And that's me. Like I'm like, the bear won't attack me because it knows that I'm a friend.
Hmm.
And like, well, the coyotes behind our house, they might be eating the neighbor's chickens, but like if I put snacks out for them, they'll know that I'm a friend. And
Hmm.
that's my toxic trait. And I'm like that with patients who come in and they are in crisis and they are super escalated. I always just think like if I bring my calm, soothing spirit to them, that like they'll calm down. And it does work sometimes. And also it has gotten me a boot in my face before. And so that does, I do not like, I'm conflict avoidant. I'm trying to get better at like being assertive in all areas of my life. I don't enjoy conflict. And I especially don't like it with patients. I don't want to fight with a patient. I know that they are here because they need help and I want to try to offer that to them. And so I'm not their mom, right? I'm not here to be bossy to them. Yes, sometimes I do really have to be firm with patients and lay out the expectations of like, I'm going to treat you with respect, but you also must treat us with respect. And you're not allowed to call me a twat waffle. Okay. That was a word I learned from a patient once. Uh, that's
I've never heard that in my
I
life.
was like, a what? You
Yeah.
called me a what? Hang on, I'm gonna laugh, and then we're gonna talk about expectations and mutual respect.
Yes.
um, but yeah, I don't like fighting with people, and it's important to me that I'm able to connect with them as a human being. And so yes, they might be out of control right now, but my goal is to try to help them find that locus of control and regain control over themselves and try to give them as much control as I can over their situation. Right. So I have to change you into this paper towel gown, and I know it sucks, and it's like one size fits nobody, and I'm really sorry. So I'm validating them in that. And I also need to get a urine sample, and I need to draw a little bit of blood on you. So what order would you like to do those things in? And so I'm not giving them a choice to do those things, but I'm giving them a choice in what order they happen, because people who are brought into the emergency department in crisis, whether it's suicidal ideations or whether it's a psychotic episode, what have you, they have no control. We take everything away from them. We take their cell phone, which is their only landline, like their only means of communication with their support structure. And we take them out of their comfortable clothes, and we take them even out of their underwear, right? Like how more vulnerable can we make them feel? But if I can offer them just a little bit of control, even sometimes it's like, hey, I've got blue Gatorade and I've got red Gatorade. Which one do you want? So trying to talk them down. And yes, even if it is my toxic trait, okay, guilty is charged. I'm okay with that being my my toxic trait, thinking I can talk everybody down. No, it doesn't work every time, but I'm going to keep trying because sometimes it does work. And sometimes I'm able to help a patient find their own control. And later, then they're like, hey, thank you for being compassionate. I've had patients say before, like, especially inmates too, they're like, no nurse has ever been this nice to me. I'm like, well, you are a human being. And like, that's the only prerequisite for receiving compassion is like, you're a human. I want to be kind and respectful to you. So
Yeah.
that's one way that I cope with some of that. It does hurt my feelings when it backfires on me and someone just fights. Like I'll usually go cry in the supply room after somebody like
Yeah.
punches me or something. I'm like, but I'm friend shaped. Why didn't they know
Exactly.
that? But the other side of tough patients, that's kind of a timely question. I had a case about a month and a half ago that just absolutely, it wrecked me. I hope I can talk about it without crying. I've done a lot of processing of it,
Hmm.
but it was a really tough call. It was a pediatric cardiac arrest, and it was really difficult. It was just really rough, and I didn't cope well with it. 2025 wasn't my greatest mental health year, and I think probably sometimes people are surprised when they're like, "What? Nurse Gwenny has had mental health struggles?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "But you seem so happy," and I'm like, "That's the whole idea. Is that sometimes the presentation of happiness or the 2 minutes of online that you see every day isn't a full representation. I'm trying to be very
Hmm.
authentic on my channels. It's important that I'm the same person online as I am in
Yes.
real life, but also I'm not going to air my dirty laundry out in front of everybody. And there's some battles that I got to fight privately, but particularly the second half of 2025 was really difficult. My husband and I did a lot of really hard work for my brand and for my business
Hmm.
that took a lot of 12, 14-hour days. I'm talking 6, 7 days a week sometimes to do the work that we did. So that was difficult. We have 5 children. That's a lot. They range from
Yes,
the oldest will be 18 this week. Our youngest is 8. So that's a lot of
it
parenting.
is.
Um, I got sick. Like I was a super sick kid, like have asthma and had pneumonia several times growing up. So it's not unusual for me to get bronchitis once or twice a year. But man, I had like 3 bouts of respiratory illness this fall that just kept kicking my butt. And just all of that together just made for a rough mental health fall for me where I had to really dig my heels in and do the next right thing. Like some days
Hmm.
felt totally overwhelming, but I'm like, okay, I can't fix this big, huge problem, but I know that I can eat a really healthy meal. And I know that I can go for a walk outside. And I know that I could read a chapter in the book that I bought from you at the Kentucky EMS conference. I know that I can do those little one next right thing. And I know I've been fighting this battle long enough that if I just do the next right thing, I know that I'm always able to overcome whatever the big problem is. Right.
Hmm.
And so um, all that to say, I was in a very fragile state. And then I had this pediatric cardiac arrest really close to Christmas. And it was really hurtful. And I was pretty dark for 2 or 3 weeks over it. And do you ever make the mistake of like looking your patient up online and like seeing what their family says about them
Yeah,
and
yeah,
things
I've
like
done that
that and
once or
learning more
twice.
about the human?
It's not a good
It's
idea. I've done it. Yeah.
it's I think it's harmful and it's helpful. It helps me to put in perspective. It helps me to find closure. But man, that one was rough. That one was really, really rough. And my husband, he's not in healthcare. Like you even just say the word blood and he's like nearing a syncopal episode.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have those experiences, but he's really good at empathy. And so, I can come home and I can process through some of those feelings with him. And then my best girlfriend, she is a former flight paramedic. And, I can talk through some of that with her. And then just doing the right things, right? Doing those little right things. Okay, I'm going to eat a healthy meal today instead of binge eating a
Hmm.
box of cereal, and I'm going to go for a walk. It's sunny today. I'm going to get my butt outside. Do I want to go for a walk? No. And you know what? I'm going to take my earbuds out and be fully present with myself and allow myself to feel those emotions, to have the thoughts. Because if we just go around with earbuds in all the time and we just have music blaring, we're just avoiding it. We're just kicking the can further down the road. Like, yes, it's okay to listen to podcasts and listen to your favorite music, but sometimes it's a practice that I think we're losing is to sit in the silence, to be fully present with your emotions and allow yourself to process them. And as you can tell by how somewhat fragile I am about this situation, like I'm still a work in progress. It's been a couple of months since the situation, but like even 5 weeks ago, I couldn't have even talked to you about it with just like, without bursting into tears and crying so hard I throw up. So it's just putting in the work of the next right thing and processing through those
Yeah,
situations.
yeah. I talk about that a lot. Which how many years have you been in nursing?
12.
See, 12 years, and still like situations like this. And I've talked to individuals that's been in it 40 years, and they'll have an episode, an event like that, and it'll affect them just the same. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. You can have that single event that sets you off, and that's why it's so important to have those proper tools and have those individuals you can talk to. And this is my favorite part about the podcast is learning everybody's coping mechanisms and learning new techniques. Hopefully it can help
Yeah.
somebody out there listening.
Yeah. You've got
Oh,
a little girl. I'm sure you've seen the Frozen series of movies, right? Does
she
she
just
love
started.
Frozen?
She just started watching them. Yes, yeah. She's been
Okay.
addicted
I
to
want you to
Moana,
watch
but now
Frozen.
she's on Frozen. Frozen two.
Oh, Moana. Oh, Moana is so good. Watch Frozen 2 with her. I saw it in the theaters with my daughters the year that it came out. It would have been, oh gosh, 2020 maybe. But I remember it was around Thanksgiving time that movie came out and I saw it in the theaters with them. And there's a moment where, sorry, spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin the movie for you. You know how Olaf is just a figure of Elsa's magic? Well, Elsa begins to die where she's at. Like she's being frozen in this cave wherever she's. So Anna and Elsa are not together, but Anna is with Olaf, and Olaf starts to turn to flurries, and Anna realizes that Elsa is dying. Wherever she's at, she's dying because Olaf is turning to flurries and disappearing. And so without Anna's excuse me, without Elsa's magic, Anna knows like Olaf can't exist. And so she knows her sister is dying. And she collapses in her grief. And like that's where I got the idea of just do the next right thing. There's a whole song of do the next right thing. And Anna is collapsing in her grief, but she's telling herself, like, I can't let this stop me. I have to keep going. I have to keep fighting. I have to do the next right thing. And I was in the theater and I was like snot bubbles, like cry hiccups, the whole 9 yards. And I was like,
Hmm.
this isn't about little girl magic Disney movie right now. This is like for the parents in the crowd who are like
Yeah,
dealing
yeah,
with
yeah.
everyone was having a mental health crisis about this time because it was like a year into COVID.
Hmm.
Watch that scene and then let me know what you think about it. See if it is super meaningful for you as
I,
well.
I will. I will. I love watching movies with her, so I'll make sure to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to pivot into your social media life real quick. What made you
Okay.
start posting about nursing online?
So I started my little videos when I used to work for a large education company. The company doesn't even exist anymore, but I called it Quick Tips Tuesday. And they were just like little nuanced things that, again, nursing school didn't teach me, but little tricks I picked up along the way, whether it's, from people who had been doing this for a really long time, or I do medical relief work in Haiti. And I have learned so much from my Haitian colleagues because, like, they have to find a way sometimes with what little they have. And so I've learned so much from my Haitian nursing colleagues. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start teaching other people this. Like at one point I didn't know this. I'm sure there's other people. And so I would like talk about like when you have to squeeze an IV bag, if you don't have a pressure bag with you, don't just squeeze the bag, like roll it down from the top and it takes way less energy and you generate so much more force. So little things like that. I started this Quick Tips Tuesday series back in like, I don't know, 2019. And the videos did really well. And then at one point in time, I started kind of developing the Nurse Gwenny brand. And I hadn't planned on doing like videos like that. I was just going to do like carousels and little posts, things like that. I had no idea. I had no idea what the Nurse Gwenny brand would become. And then I think my first video might have been on the trauma triad and like, boom, it took off. And I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And then I did one on like shoulder dystocia. Again, boom, took off. And I was like, holy cow. And I found that way that I have of teaching, like it's not, my way of teaching isn't for everybody. And that's okay. What a boring world it would be if we were all exactly the same. But
Hmm.
not everybody learns in that like classroom didactic, like Visine dry eyes commercial
Hmm.
guy. Yeah,
Hmm.
not everybody learns that way. There are some of us that like need to see something, like we might be visual learners, or there might be people who have ADHD. I think that's like a very common thing in the EMS community, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
we need to be stimulated in multiple ways. We need to see it, we need to hear it, we need to visualize it. And so I have found that like my way of understanding things that took me so long of like digging through textbooks and listening to this podcast and deep diving that on YouTube, I could like collate all the neat ways that I have figured out how to learn and then put those into videos and it clicks with people. And so that's how the Nurse Gwenny platform just grew.
That's interesting. It's like I talked about. It's so interesting, just how creative your videos are teaching wise. So how do you plan those? Like, do you just have a notes app that you if you get an idea that because that's what I do with my videos.
It's email. I email and I text myself. And as of this morning, I currently have 225 emails to me from me that are unread in my Gmail. I get that question a lot. Where did you get all the ideas for your videos? And I tell people it's intrusive creativity. Like last night, I couldn't sleep because I was being bombarded with like, oh my gosh, that would be a really good idea. And so I have to text myself. Like I don't like having my cell phone on my bedside table. I think it's better when I put it far away from me. But I have learned that like, that means I just have to get up and walk across the room whenever I get an idea. Because if I get an idea, the biggest lie I tell myself is I'll remember that. No, I know better than to trust myself, that I have to either text it or email it to myself and then I remember it. And a lot of times it's just like either patient encounters where I figure something out or learn something new, or sometimes people will send me a request like, oh, I'm really struggling with understanding blood typing. Can you help me understand it? And I'm like, yeah, I bet if I took like a foam sword and a name tag, antibodies and antigens, I bet I could make that really easy for people to understand. And so I do a video like that. Or like I have a big Monstera plant in my living room that was getting huge. And so I repotted it and split it into two, and now it's dying. And so I told my husband, I was like, that can be a video about pulling a supraglottic airway and replacing it with an endotracheal tube. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it because you might make it worse. And
Yeah,
so that's what my video is going to be today. A spoiler alert. I should
that's
have just left the
awesome.
Monstera good enough alone. And I'm sure that you've had a situation where you pulled a supraglottic airway that somebody else put in, and then you couldn't intubate them, and you're like, shit, I should have left the eye gel in place.
Yeah, my wife can probably relate to the plant because I kid you not, we've got 30 plants in our house right now. She's developed a new hobby, and it's scary. she,
I
she
love it.
had
Well, next time,
yeah, huh? Go
next
ahead.
time I see you, I'm going to bring some starts for her because last count
Oh,
I have 46.
whoo. Yeah, I don't know the exact amount, but I feel like there's like 30. And she was repotting them all the other night, and she was asking ChatGPT, "What kind of certain soil do I need? Because this one looks like this." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad you got a hobby."
Listen,
But
I'm going to help you out. I'm going to tell you what to get her for Valentine's Day that's going to be
ooh,
better than any like chocolates or flowers or jewelry that you're able to get here. I have a plant food called Happy House Plant. I'll send you a link for it. Like
okay,
I'm not getting paid to say this.
yeah, yeah,
But Happy House Plant, and it's just little like plant food that you drop into your water every time you feed them. And my plants have gone berserk. I mean, they're humongous. I used to joke that like I had a black thumb instead of a green thumb because I just killed all my plants. But I wanted to be a plant mom so bad, and I had figured it out. But yeah, you got to get her this plant food because it will make her house plants just grow like crazy, and she will just be a happy woman.
that I will do that. That's a great idea. Thank you so much. um, so you mentioned you got 5 kids, so
Yeah.
that's a lot because I've got 3, and I can't imagine having 2 more. How do you balance? Like, what's the hardest part of balancing? Nursing life, creator life, mom life, wife life, like everything.
Uh, Maybe I'm not the best person to ask because I'm not very good at it. It's really hard.
I don't think
I don't
anybody
sleep.
is.
Yeah, I'm trying though. That's one of those like next right things. Like sometimes
Yes.
it's time to just like you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, like you're filming 3 this week so that hopefully you can take a break. I try to be smart about the way that I spend my time, just like I cluster care with going into a patient's room and meeting all of their needs so that they're not calling me back in there 100 times. I try to do that with my social media as well, like batch film, like maybe once a week and get a few videos filmed, like change t-shirts between videos so it doesn't look like I did them all in one day. Um, I'm lately, I have not been good at batch filming lately. So then I feel like it's like the pressure is on to film a video every single day. But also realizing that like the world will not stop spinning on its axis if I don't post a video today. Like nobody is sitting at home like, where's Nurse Gwenny's daily video? Like it's gonna be okay. And like having a healthy like sense of self outside of nursing is probably the best thing that we can do for ourselves.
Hmm.
I think especially in flight, like people, I am people. When they get into flight, it becomes, I distinctly remember my boss telling me when I got hired into flight, because I felt like I didn't deserve to be hired into flight yet. Like maybe I wasn't ready, and they were being extremely generous by giving me a chance. And my boss said to me, "You do nothing for the next 90 days." He said, "You eat, sleep, breathe everything. This job, your family doesn't matter, your church doesn't matter, nothing matters but your job as a flight nurse." And I'm a recovering people pleaser. I was not healed at that point in time. I was like, "Yes, sir. Okay, absolutely. You say
Hmm.
jump, I'm pulling out a trampoline." And I made it everything. And I see that happen with a lot of people who are new to flight. Like they buy the t shirts, they change their Facebook profile photo, they put the stickers on their car. Like everything becomes about flight nursing. And we cannot do that. And I know that you have probably seen this in the fire community as well. That's why we see a lot of these guys have a whole career as a firefighter, and then they retire and they have an existential crisis because their
Yep.
entire identity was in being a firefighter. Well, with being a flight nurse, a flight paramedic, whatever your specialty is, if we put our identity in that, it can be taken from us so quickly. You can
Hmm.
make a clinical error and lose your license. You can get hurt either on or off the job, and that will disable you from being able to do the job that you are doing. You could be diagnosed with something that's going to prevent you from being able to work the job. There are so many things that can pull us from the current role that we are in. And if we have sunk our entire identity into that, now you're in a crisis
Yes.
because you have made all of who you are your job. And so, um, a lot of times people will say to me, if I'm on the podcast or speaking somewhere, they'll say, "Oh, you're so passionate about nursing." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. Do
Hmm.
not put words on my mouth. I'm not passionate about nursing. I care about nursing. I care about my patients. I care about the care that I give, but I'm not passionate about it. I am passionate about being a really good wife and mom and daughter and sister and friend. Like those are the things that matter way more than nursing.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's still okay to do things on your own time to better yourself as a nurse, to study off duty and to do things like that. But we cannot make that our identity, or it's going to destroy us when that's taken from us.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. I agree with all that. You were talking about the firefighters retiring, and that's the biggest thing I've seen. My dad retired and from the fire department, and he tells me all the time. It's weird going from living with individuals every third day, 24 hours at a time. They're your family, and then you retire, and you go from talking to those individuals, and you don't talk anymore, and it's like losing your family. And I can't imagine that's got to be hard. I'm sure my dad. He still talks to some of the guys from his crew, but not like he did. Like a couple of them spoke
And
at his mom's funeral.
those people have the audacity to keep living their lives, and the fire station keeps running without you, right?
I
And
know.
that's when that crisis is like, I thought I was so integral to the success of this team, and now that I'm retired and they're carrying on without me, right?
Hmm.
And then it feels like all of that sacrifice, all of that work that I put in, all of me sinking my identity into that, and they're moving on without me. Like, did I
Hmm.
ever matter? And then you just, it's a spiral.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Well, we'll talk about a little funny stuff real quick. The topic's literally called the fun stuff. Do you ever judge people's veins in public? Be honest.
Absolutely. I can also sometimes tell who's on Lasix by how they smell. I used to be a lot better at it when I worked. I'm not joking. When I used to work on that critical care tele floor as a tech, I was of course emptying urinals and hats from the toilet all night because you have to measure intakes and outputs of those patients, and I could tell by the smell of their urine who was on Lasix and who wasn't. A skill I never wanted to acquire. I never asked for that. I just have a really good sense of smell, and I can smell it on people like out in public, or I can see like I'm like, oh my gosh, that person has metabolic syndrome. I wish we could help them to, learn a few skills that would help them to live a healthier lifestyle and extend the life of their kidneys. Or
Hmm.
someone's swollen ankles and you're like, oh gosh. Like my husband, like I said, he's not in healthcare, but he's like a tactical guy. He's really into firearms and things like that. And when we go to a place, I always know that I have to sit with my back to the door because he has to face the door, right? That's kind
Oh
of like
yeah.
a very husbandly thing. I'm sure that you do that as
Hmm.
well with your wife. And he's always like checking, like assessing threats in the room and like
Oh
exits
yeah.
and things like that. Whereas when I get to a public place and sit down, I'm looking who is the most likely person that's either going to choke on their steak or that's going to have a sinkable episode. And like, do I see an AED in this space? And do I see anybody who I just like sense like ICU nurse vibes from them that I know that they can help me? And listen, I literally never, not one single time have I ever had to code someone off duty. But gosh dang, if I don't still prepare for it every time I'm out in public, I don't know why I do this.
Hmm. Yeah. That's so crazy. What would you say is the one phrase you say 50 times a shift, like something, a common phrase?
What the fuck?
uh,
Mostly to myself. Mostly, look, listen, I love it when a patient says the F word. I'm like, oh, the pressure's off. Okay, yeah, cool. Now I can cuss too. You cussed first. Now I can cuss in front of the patient, right? And listen, that's another underappreciated skill is like establishing rapport with your patients. Of course, we don't treat every patient exactly the same. If it's a little kid, I'm going to talk to them about Bluey. I'm going to be like, do you watch Bluey? Who's your favorite? Oh my gosh, Bandit is so funny, isn't he? Right. And we'll talk in an age appropriate way. And then we get little Granny who had a single episode in church. We're like, Ethel, you are right. Yes, I heard your pastor preaching from Esther when we walked into the church, and I love Esther. She's one of my favorite women in the Bible, right? And we're
mhm.
talking prim and proper to her. And then we got Billy Bob that come from a bar fight, from downtown. We're like, oh hell yeah, man, you should have seen the other guy, right? Connecting with them, but. So many times, yeah, it's walking out of a patient's room or walking away from a conversation, and just sometimes it's at me, like, what the fuck, Gwenny, get your shit together.
Yeah, I've always a lot of our newer guys. I've had to tell them to watch themselves a few times just because of how they talk around the station. They'll sometimes forget to turn it off. Like we had a guy that fell down the other day, and we had to help him up. And the guy I'm working with literally looks at the floor and says to the patient, "Watch out, there's piss there," where he peed on the floor. I'm like, "Come on, you can't say it like that." It's just
Yeah.
they just forget to turn it off sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
What's your go-to coffee order after a brutal shift?
So I'm not a coffee girly. I hated coffee up until I met my husband, and he loves coffee and he likes Folgers. The man has high standards in many areas of his life. Coffee is not one of them. He's just a standard, straight up, regular old Folgers kind of guy. And he got me started on coffee, and I will take a little bit. I will say recently I had a cup of hazelnut coffee from Panera. That shit was good. That was really good. But I like about 1 part coffee and 3 parts almond milk and 1 Splenda. I don't know
Do
if that
do
counts as coffee.
do you drink any caffeine then? Like energy drinks or anything? Oh, DCs?
Bro, to know me is to know that I love Diet Coke. Yeah, I'm a Diet Coke girly through and through.
We had a battalion chief when I first started. I swear he went through a 12 pack of Diet Cokes every day. It was just a
I'm not
part of
quite
him.
that bad, but 6 is not unusual.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't have more than 2 in a row without breaking it up with water because I am super sensitive to any kind of substance, like 1 Benadryl and I'm out cold for 3.5 days. But like caffeine, I could never drink a Monster drink. I would just simply die. If I have 2 Diet Cokes on an empty stomach, I can like see sound waves and I'm like tachycardic at 120. So I have to be careful. So yeah, no, I can't handle much caffeine. Can't do Monster drinks.
Gotcha. Well, this section's called just for the audience. This is for the audience listening. What do you wish patients understood more about nurses?
Oof. We're really capable. We're really capable. And I think maybe people understand that in the post-COVID era, but the thought of doctor's helpers, like, look, I'm not getting bent out of shape if somebody calls me a doctor helper. That's fine. And when people I number one, don't engage with like haters in the comments or whatever, but sometimes there will be no offense, a salty paramedic, not you. You are the exception to the rule. It's an ironically ironic with you to be called
Yeah,
salty because you're
yeah,
simply not. When I met you, like I was pleasantly surprised at how down to earth you are. You were you're salt of the earth, I would
yeah.
say,
Yeah,
more than you
okay.
are salty.
Thank you.
So yeah, every once in a while I'll get a salty paramedic in the comments that are like, "Shut up, doctor's helper. I don't need orders to do anything." And I want to be like, "Bro, what are protocols? You're not just out here wild and west in it. You are following doctor's orders too. They're just called protocols, right?
Yep.
And you have discernment in the field. And like that's okay. Like I'm not in competition with you as a paramedic, nurses, but the lay public, just knowing that like nurses are really, really capable, and we do a lot. Doctors are not incompetent. They're brilliant, right? They know, they have such a greater understanding than I do as a nurse. I really respect their role as well, but I think sometimes patients don't realize that nurses are sometimes a line of defense to protect them, because when I'm working in the emergency department, I have 3 patients, whereas my physician might have 12 to 15 patients that they are taking care of at a time. So by simple math alone, they don't spend nearly the amount of time with the patient that I do. And so there might be some things that I see that the physician doesn't, or I might have learned something about the patient that the physician didn't get. And so they order something on the patient. And I know that that's not an appropriate order. And I might go to the doctor and say, "Hey, can we try this instead? Because the patient told me XYZ." And so
Mhm.
I think sometimes patients might not realize how competent nurses are.
Yeah, that that's good. What's if there's a new nurse out there listening? What would be your advice for them?
Oh, so many things of advice that I wish that I had known early on. I think the most important is create that safety net for yourself that's going to keep you in the game long term. You brushed on this earlier in our conversation when we were talking about how to recover after difficult calls. We cannot wait until we are in crisis to establish those lifelines, right? So you cannot wait until you are crying so hard you're going to throw up in the supply room after a difficult call to be able to say, "I need someone to lean into," or "I need some coping skills to process this grief." We have to establish those while we are well. Going back to prevention, a dime of prevention saves us a dollar in treatment. Establish yourself with a therapist, or have someone that you can lean into that will teach you healthy coping skills. Heal some of your past traumas. I saw some at some point in time something on like Instagram or something that said some healers go into medicine, whether that's a physician or a therapist or a nurse or a paramedic or what have you. Some people go into roles of healing because nobody healed them.
Hmm.
And so I think we can be such better healers if we heal ourselves. So dealing with whatever either childhood trauma or issues we have as adults, taking care of those can only make us a stronger nurse, paramedic, whatever your role is. Establishing a healthy sense of self outside of the career, having a support structure that you can lean into after a really difficult shift, knowing how to care for your body, right? Eating right. That's not to say you're never going to have come home and have bacon and eggs after a 2 a.m. mid shift and, just live it up, but that can't be our normal, right?
Hmm.
We have to be able to fuel our bodies, exercise, do things like go outside on a sunny day, do the right things to keep ourselves healthy, because it's not a matter of if we encounter some sort of horrifically traumatic event working in healthcare, it's when and how often.
All right. In closing, I heard you have your own library now. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when I was talking about my husband and I just had a huge project that we've been working on for the last several months, it's called the Nurse Gwenny Library. I have had no less than 1 bazillion people comment on TikTok videos or on Instagram or whatever that said, like, "Man, I wish I could get CEUs for this." Or say something like, "I learned more from this 3-minute video than I did all of the health streams that I had to do yesterday." And so earlier, when you were talking about like some firefighters don't care about learning the EMS side, like they do. And so many other people are looking for ways to get continuing education credits or just sources of learning, right? They might not even be looking for credit hours. They're just looking to learn these topics. I get droves of messages every day. "Hey, can you make a video on this? Can you make a video on that?" And last time I looked, I have something like 750 videos that I've done over the last few years of doing this. And like, I'm like, oh yeah, I know I have a video on conscious sedation. I'll have to go find it. And it takes me a little bit to look it up on TikTok or whatever platform they reach out to me on and send it to them. And so I created the Nurse Gwenny library. And so it's an annual subscription. And right now there's something like 85 courses on there, and we're adding to it every single week. So I actually wrote an entire critical care course. It's called Flight Ready with Nurse Gwenny. And it's a critical care prep course it covers everything in the breakdown for the FPC, so the flight paramedic exam, and the CCPC, which is the critical care paramedic, as well as the CFRN, certified flight nurse, and CTRN, certified transport nurse for the ground CCT nurses. So it's a critical care prep course. It's 29.5 CEUs, but every course that's out there that I am aware of teaches critical care in silos of topics. So you learn all of your respiratory pathologies, and then you learn all of your cardiac pathologies, and then you learn all of your endocrine stuff. But you and I both know, Cody, that's not how patients present. Sometimes you have a patient with CHF who also has COPD, and now they also have pneumonia on top of that. And you have to weave these pathologies together and think critically about how all of these things play against each other and the interventions that we're going to use and the lab values associated with those pathologies. And then do we have to think about, oh my gosh, hyperkalemia, and how do I treat that? How does that mix in with all of this? And so that's how I wrote the course. It's 36 patient scenarios that intertwine pathologies and treatments and the pharmacology and the labs associated with that, because that's how I learn best. I learn best by doing it, by experiencing it, by seeing that kind of patient. And the next best thing is a scenario. And so I wrote that Flight Ready course. And so that is included in the Nurse Gwenny library. But I have what's called Bites, and it's just like 1 hour of short form content. And so I've taken all of my EKG videos. And so I have EKG Bites, and it's an hour of just all of my TikToks that I've done about axis deviation, interpretation of a posterior MI, and things like that. And I have another one on pediatric bites and all of this. So it's like 85 hours so far, and I'm adding more every single week. And then I also roped in a couple of other brilliant clinicians who have also contributed. So I have a full comprehensive 4-hour ventilator management course from Melody Bishop RT. Anybody who follows her on Instagram or TikTok knows that she does great education on vent management. She's an RT and an anesthesia assistant up in Canada. I've got content, all the podcasts from a rapid response nurse, Sarah Lorenzini. She's a brilliant nurse and also does a great job of teaching difficult concepts. And then our favorite ICU nerd, Nurse Dose podcast. He is a CVICU nurse from Texas, and so he has contributed a lot of his content. So people can subscribe to the Nurse Gwenny library. Just go to nursegwenny.com. It's really obvious where it is. But for your followers, Salty, I made them a custom coupon.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you want to subscribe to the Nurse Gwenny library, you can use coupon code SALTY, and that will save you $10 on your first year of subscription.
Oh yeah. Everybody out there listening, like I know you were talking about, you had 12 to 14-hour days, and now I know why. That sounds like such a huge undertaking, and that's got to be such a breath of fresh air knowing that it's live, which I know you said you're still adding to it, still doing work on it, but uh it's always good to being able to do a project and release it and, being proud of what you did. So that's a huge
Yeah,
undertaking. I can't
thank
imagine.
you.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of it because I wish I could go back in time. And like, I did this for younger me. I did this for new nurse Gwenny, who didn't
Mhm.
know any of this stuff. And I think back, I could have been such a better nurse earlier in my career had I known all of this stuff and if I had access to education like this. So I hope that people enjoy it. The feedback that we're getting so far is that people are like, yes, we've been hungry for this, and like, oh, such a dopamine hit.
Exactly. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. The conversation's been great. I've learned a lot. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Make sure to check out our library. It sounds wonderful. If you've been watching the podcast, you enjoy it, please drop a 5-star rating. It really helps us out, as well as making sure you're actually following the podcast. As always, thank you all so much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.